What if you dropped all the salt from the oceans into one place? Let's imagine for a moment that you have a magic button. You press it, and in an instant, every single grain of salt from all the Earth's oceans disappears and reappears in one single pile. Where does it land? Doesn't matter. Could be in your backyard, could be in the middle of the desert, could be inside your neighbor's swimming pool. The important part is, all the salt from the oceans is now in one place. So, what happens? First, let's establish how much salt we're even talking about. The oceans are salty, no surprises there, but how salty? On average, about 3.5% of seawater is dissolved salts, mostly sodium chloride. Since the total mass of Earth's oceans is about 1.4 billion cubic kilometers, that means we're looking at around 50 quadrillion kilograms of salt. That's 500 quadrillion kilograms. To put that in perspective, if you had a regular kitchen salt shaker, you'd need more shakers than there are atoms in the observable universe. Okay, not really, but it feels that way. Now, what would this look like if it were all dropped in one place? Let's say the salt falls into a giant heap on land. Table salt has a density of about 2.16 grams per cubic centimeter. With 50 quadrillion kilograms, you'd get a mountain of pure white crystals, so massive it would tower over anything Earth has ever seen. In fact, it would dwarf Mount Everest many times over. The pile would stretch so high into the sky that you wouldn't just lose sight of the top, you'd lose it beyond the stratosphere. Planes wouldn't be flying over it, satellites would be colliding with it. Congratulations, you've invented the first mountain tall enough to need space traffic control. But that's just the beginning. Let's think about what happens to the planet if all this salt is ripped out of the oceans. Remember, salt isn't just there for taste. It's essential to the chemistry of seawater. Without it, ocean circulation would collapse. Salt affects density, which drives currents like the Gulf Stream. Without currents, Earth's climate system goes completely haywire. Europe freezes, the tropics overheat, and suddenly every meteorologist on Earth just gives up and goes to sell lemonade instead. And it gets worse. Marine life is adapted to salty water. Fish, plankton, coral, all of them are basically fine-tuned biological machines designed to survive in salty conditions. Without salt, they're in trouble. If you've ever put a freshwater fish into a saltwater tank or vice versa, you know it doesn't end well. Now imagine doing that to the entire biosphere of the oceans. Spoiler, there wouldn't be much seafood left to spoil. Okay, let's get back to the giant salt pile. You might be thinking, could we eat it? Number, not even close. If every human alive today tried to eat their fair share of the salt mountain, each person would need to eat about 6 billion tons of salt. Considering that the recommended daily intake is about 1 teaspoon, it would take you, let's see, forever. And then some. You'd die long before making a dent. The salt pile would outlive humanity. In fact, if aliens landed on Earth after humans disappeared, the only thing they might find is this giant, shining white monument. They'd probably think it was some kind of religious structure built to worship French fries. But what if, instead of leaving it on land, all the salt were dropped in one place in the ocean? The result would be a brine pool, a hyper-concentrated patch of salt water so dense that almost nothing could survive inside it. It would sink to the bottom and spread like a toxic puddle. Deep-sea creatures unlucky enough to be nearby would float up like oversalted pickles. There's also the little problem of gravity. A mountain of salt this massive would weigh so much that it would actually deform the crust of the Earth. Picture the ground sinking under the unimaginable weight. The pile might punch through tectonic plates, create earthquakes, or even form its own miniature tectonic system. Who knows, maybe in a few million years, Earth would have a new continent made entirely of salt. We could call it Sodium Land. At this point, you might be thinking, this is ridiculous. And you'd be right. But that's the fun of these thought experiments. They take something ordinary, in this case, the same salt you put on popcorn, and scale it up to absurd planetary levels. In the end, if you actually dropped all the ocean's salt into one place, you'd end up with a disaster on multiple fronts: a lifeless ocean, a climate in ruins, a mountain tall enough to poke satellites, and a salty tombstone marking the spot where Earth's balance used to be. So next time you sprinkle a little salt on your fries, maybe be glad it's just a tiny pinch, and not a mountain big enough to break the planet.